bunch of people lined up in here. People are ready and waiting. They missed the Christmas live stream, so now they are desperate for some content from the alt-centrist side of the internet. We're live on stereo, I think. I'm not entirely sure. I haven't gotten any feedback on there yet, but I know we had audio issues last time. So I'm waiting for confirmation on that. If any one of you guys could give me just a shout out on there. We got a bunch of good stories for you guys tonight. Pretty good stuff. We're approaching the end of 2021. Where did it even go? Nobody knows. But Paul's in chat as well. What's up, Paul? I like tacos as well. We got a bunch of interesting stuff to talk about. We're talking about the Delta Karen. You guys saw the Delta Karen, right? The video is going viral on the internet of the woman spitting and attacking the guy on the Delta flight. We're going to talk about that a little bit from a little bit of a different angle than you've heard previously, because everyone else is, oh my God, crazy mask mandate, blah, 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 mask lady, come, whatever. That's boring narrative, boring opinions, boring angle. We're going to give you something a little different. We're going to be talking about Dr. Robert Malone just got banned off Twitter. If you don't know who that is, you're living under a rock. We'll talk about who he is, why that's important, and why you should be paying attention, at least a little bit to this stuff. Not a lot of mental energy, but paying attention to it to some degree. We're going to be talking about the big story of the night is the narrative shift that has occurred. The narrative shift in COVID, guys. I don't know if have you felt it? Did you feel it? I felt it. It happened. It's huge narrative shift in the COVID world. We're going to be showing you why and how we know the narrative is moving, rapidly moving. And a pretty heavy COVID show today, for you guys. Just fair warning. The news is quite slow lately. So we're going to be talking about, but it's okay because the COVID stuff is pretty good. So we got a couple other fun, small stories to talk about as well. And let's just jump right into it. Let's go. Bam! Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. The last stream of 2021. We've been streaming for 98 shows now. I think we missed maybe like 3 weeks. We've been streaming every week, sometimes twice a week, for over a year. Give me some credit here, okay? That's pretty good. Pretty dang good. But thank you, the viewer, for sticking along. Because despite the fact that we've been shadow banned on YouTube and basically every platform, we have had zero growth the entire year. But our core viewership has maintained. So for the most part, at least you guys are still here. So thank you. Hope you guys had a great 2021. And we got Holly in the chat. What's up, Holly? Region Zen. Dari. Welcome, guys. What's up? Oh, yeah. You guys. So, okay. If you guys want to talk about the Jack Murphy stuff, we can talk about that. Probably half my audience doesn't even know who that is. So it's not going to be terribly interesting to a lot of people. But I think there's some value we can gain out of that. Remind me later in the stream, and maybe we'll talk about the Jack Murphy stuff if we got time, because that is quite interesting. Half my audience is like, who's Jack Murphy? What's he talking about? It's fine. Don't worry about it. We got some, let's do a little warm-up. A little warm-up here on a funny story that I noticed that was floating around the internet. I wanted to share it with you guys. It says a lot about our government and the efficiency and the effectiveness of the government. And let me just quickly switch windows here. This is from the IRS website, and it's not new. It's just that somebody happened to have found this recently. You guys may have seen this already. You know what's coming. So we're looking at tax information, right? We got to report taxes to the IRS, unfortunately. Taxation is theft, et cetera, et cetera. All libertarian kind of memes can go along here, insert here. But there's a section on the IRS website that says other income. So if you're coming to the IRS website, you need to know, what do I need to report on my taxes? Well, this is particularly relevant for probably more so now than ever in 2021, because there are a lot of people who are getting sources of income that aren't necessarily, what should we say, kosher or even legal, but it's okay because the IRS takes that into account. So under the income section, other income, there is a one section, if we scroll down here, past the maintaining space at home, gambling, lotteries, raffles, illegal activities. Actually, you do have to report income from illegal activities on your taxes. So we know that you're not interested in following the laws otherwise, but for tax law, everyone knows these criminals are filing the taxes, perfectly to the T by the numbers, right? Okay, well, that's kind of weird. Also, if we scroll down just a little bit more, we can find stolen property. That's right. So we have to report income from stolen property. And I lost my bookmark here, but if I just do a Control F, it'll take me right to it. Go up to the second one. Oops. Yeah. The illegal activity was pretty good. I didn't see that in previously. But stolen property right here on the IRS website. If you steal property, you must report its fair market value in your income in the year you steal it, unless you return it to its rightful owner in the same year. So there's a lot of organized crime rings out there right now that are going to be paying probably quite a lot on taxes, they're going to have to report all that stolen property to the IRS. Maybe we'll get some extra revenue. We can, get some more government programs going off that income that we're getting from the stolen property. Who knows? Anyway, I just thought that was funny. I wanted to point that out to you guys. And make sure you're aware the IRS is spending a lot of well-earned time and energy and resources on the right things. Okay. Miklo, what's up, Miklo, what you got on? It says we're on day 2 of the 2-week lockdown, over 1 year now. Yep, that's right. 14 days to slow the spread. 2 years later. Just about 2 years. Let's jump to the next story of the day. I don't know about you guys, but every time I go to the doctor, and I've had to do that approximately 0 times this year, I honestly, really, truly dread having to get weighed. Yeah, that's right. Getting my weight taken because, first of all, they're healthy at any size. Okay, so I could be 500 pounds, perfectly healthy. I don't even know why they weigh me, to be honest. There's really no indicators of health that have anything to do with weight. But luckily for me and others like me out there, I have the ability to get a card that I can carry with me everywhere I go that says, "Don't weigh me." And CNN's going to tell us all about it here. So Don't Weigh Me cards aim to reduce stress at the doctor's office. That's right, because if you're going to the doctor's office, it's already a stressful situation. Why exacerbate that stress with the fact that you have to get weighed on a scale and have a number presented to you that's absolute and objective? Because we don't want anything to do with any objectivity. Now, a scale, that's objective. I step on that. Unless I'm on another planet, it's going to say the same number every time I get on that, right? Because of gravity. But a lot of people don't really particularly like that. So CNN says a body positivity website has created free Don't Weigh Me cards for patients who find stepping on the scale at the doctor's office stressful. That's right. The cards, created by California-based more-love.org, I'm sure they get a lot of government money, are available for free to individuals, excluding the cost of postage. There's also the option for businesses to purchase the cards at $35 per 100 cards. So guys, if you own a small business, you want to show your support for the LGBT community. Wait a second, I just had an epiphany. Where is the F in the LGBT? How could there not be an F for fat in the LGBTF? Because you just saw my brain right there off the cuff immediately associate LGBT with fat people. Now, am I wrong in doing that? I don't think so, because let's be honest. There's no conservatives going to the doctor's office with these Don't Weigh Me cards, right? There's no anti-woke people going to the doctor's office with these Don't Weigh Me cards. It's all the same crowd, right? The cards read, "Please don't weigh me unless it's medically necessary." Adding, quote, "If you really need my weight, please tell me why so that I can give you my informed consent, as shown in photographs on more-love.org. So I saw this story previously. We may have mentioned it, but I didn't really go into it hard because I didn't know if it was real. And now that CNN's covering it, I know it's 100% factual. So we can get some more details on what exactly is happening here. So their argument is that you can be weighed without consent. Does that mean you can get like rape weighed? You know what I'm saying? Weighed against your will. On one side of the card it says, don't weigh me unless it's medically necessary. The other side it says, why? Because most health conditions can be addressed without knowing my weight. Is that true? I don't think it is. When you focus on my weight, I get stressed, and that's not healthy. So here's where they trap themselves on the second line here. They don't realize that, if you can say, for example, I can be healthy at any size, as it says in the last bullet point here on the card, it says, I pursue healthy behaviors regardless of my weight status. See health at every size. If I can be healthy at every size, can't I not also be healthy at every stress level? Why do they imply that being stressed is unhealthy? They say, actually, they don't imply, they say directly, if you focus on my weight, I get stressed, and that's not healthy. I think we should impose the law, the rule, the strategy of malicious compliance. Some people like to call it aggressive compliance, but I've been calling it malicious compliance because ultimately our intent is to destroy something, right? We're trying to destroy a terrible idea. So we'll call it malicious compliance. We're not going to beat around the bush as far as our intentions go. We should say and start a movement that really just says we can be healthy at any stress level. Because the logical conclusion that you get to if you say healthy at every size is that no actual indications of health have anything to do with health. One of those indicators being stress. And I don't know if you guys have looked at, researched, read, have focused on your health at all anytime in the last few years, but there's been a lot of shift and emphasis towards health issues being associated with stress. Even more so than weight, probably, I would say. Everything these days, from anxiety, depression, weight gain, illnesses, COVID. You heard it. COVID kills your immune system because of stress. I'm sorry. Stress kills your immune system to COVID and weakens your immunity to COVID. It's everywhere. Everything has to do with stress. So all I'm saying is we can be healthy at any stress level. Okay. I think that's important. Let's see. Holly says, doesn't reduce the stress of the joints, though. Am I right? Yeah. Well, can't talk about that. See, that's objective. That's reality-based. And if you go anywhere near reality, well, they're going to whip out a card that says, hey, you can't be talking about this. It makes me stressed out. Let's go over to stereo. We got Paul.
As you're saying, it's full clown world. Health at any blood glucose sugar level. Sure, yeah. This 300 is totally good. Hell, 800. Knock yourself out. We know weight, that it correlates with everything. Essentially, it acts as like a everywhere in inflammation. And inflammation is, not good. It's a disease process. It's also a healing process. But number one, drugs. You got to know someone's weight for a lot of drugs because they're based on weight. So any physician who takes their Hippocratic oath seriously is like, you won't consent to weighing you. I could do my best guess estimate. However, that would be unethical. So I just won't treat you. That's what they really do deserve.
Not only what they deserve, but it's also the logical conclusion because, as you said, if the doctor can't know the weight, they can't make a healthy decision. And, the Hippocratic oath compels them to do no harm. So we can't allow for the possibility of harm by guessing the weight, right? Right? Come on, we can play these games. We can play these games all day. You guys want to play games? We can play games. I'm really good at games. By the way, how does the stereo sound? Is it good? Can I get a thumbs up on the stereo? I had complaints last time. We saw a video. Probably the most newsworthy thing that happened in the last week is this video of a woman assaulting a dude, an old guy, an old gentleman. Not a dude, he's a gentleman, on an airplane, a Delta flight going somewhere, presumably in the air, since they're on an airplane. But it's been making the rounds, and we need to talk about this because this is something, I think a lot of people are missing what's really going on here. But I could also be just completely making this up. So let's talk about that. Delta Karen, whose name is Patricia Cornwall, had other brushes with the law. Okay, that's not what we're talking about, but I have an article here just to talk about the general story that's happening. So, for those of you who don't know, a woman without her mask on approached and basically assaulted an old man on a flight who was trying to eat food, yelling directly in his face to put his mask on. And it escalated to the point to where she actually attacked him physically, scratched him, punched him in the head, and then spit on him. Now, I know what you're thinking. Spitting. The mask Karen, not wearing the mask, spits on the man who's also not wearing a mask because he's not wearing a mask. I get what you're thinking. It doesn't make much logical sense because the whole point, presumably, is that we're trying to prevent the spread of germs, bacteria, viruses, things like that, right? You would think that the last thing you would want to do, probably towards the bottom of the list of my to-do list, if I was trying to prevent the spread of germs and viruses, is to spit on somebody's face. So we had to figure out what's going on here. And there wasn't much more information that was released on this. She was arrested after. She's now facing federal charges for apparently it's like extra bad to attack people on a plane flight. Now, some information came out about old Patty Cornwall here. She's 51 years old and allegedly became aggressive with officers after she crashed her gray Nissan into a tree in Santa Rosa Beach November 10th. Okay, that's not what I really care about. We don't have to, poison the well here with previous stuff. We're looking at this particular event that happened. Now, if we scroll down through the article here, we'll find, of course, the mugshot. Just gorgeous. But we find out that she's actually an actress. She was on Baywatch, and apparently she was a model as well. Now, I like this story, and my brain immediately went to a different angle on this because I talked a lot of times about the impending cliff that we're all about to fall off of as a collective society, where the women who are getting older, losing their looks, losing their incomes from things like modeling, for example, are becoming increasingly mentally ill, and they're existing within the perpetual meat grinder that is the media apparatus. So if you take a single 51-year-old woman who has no stable masculine influence in her life to kind of even out that neuroticism that comes with just being a woman in general. I'm not taking a pot shot at any of the ladies. It's a proven fact that neuroticism is naturally higher personality trait in women than it is in men. But you also take into account that she was a model. She's used to getting everything she wants in life, right? So it gets to a point to where she gets up on the plane. She yells at the old guy for not wearing a mask. She's expecting everybody on the plane to stand up and say, "Yeah, you go, girl. Let's get this guy without the mask." It doesn't happen. Nobody cares. Well, is it because she's old and not as attractive anymore? Maybe. If she was younger and still attractive, would the plane have stood up and helped? Maybe. But what's happening here? What makes somebody spit in the face of another human being for doing something as trivial as not wearing a mask? That is intense mental illness. Now, we could argue all day about whether that mental illness is primarily sourced from the media, because this is a COVID-related issue, so our brains would quickly go to the media in this particular case. But I think the bigger picture, if we zoom out a little bit more, this is exactly what we can expect to see when I talked about the cliff of women who are now doing the feminism thing, being single, career-oriented, getting into their older levels of age in life, having no families, no husbands, no nothing, and then having just that cycle of mental illness perpetuated into eternity until the point to where they get so mentally ill that they spit in a passenger's face on a plane because they are just they've lost it. When I said that we're going to be facing a giant wave of this in the future, of women losing it, of like crazy wine ants everywhere left and right because they've foregone trying to find like marriage or meaningful relationships in favor of careers, things like that. This is exactly that. This is a perfect case study of a woman who sailed through her early life on her looks, got everything she ever wanted, hit the wall at 5,000 miles an hour at 51. It does not get noticed or cared about in society at all anymore, but still retains all the mental illness and the damage that came from her life choices. And this is just one of millions of cases where this is going to happen in the future, guys. As these women get older, let me up the volume a little bit here for you. As these women get older, there's going to be more and more of these that fall into this hole. So that's my take on the whole Delta Karen thing. That this is not about her in particular. It's not about COVID. It's about a general overall pandemic, or epidemic rather, not pandemic, because it's specific to our country, of single, lonely, post-wall spinsters who are used to getting everything they want, having society tailored to their whims, and now, yeah, many suck cases. Did I say many suck cases? How's the volume now? I adjusted it a little bit and I moved the mic, but I can pump it up a little bit more if I need to. Let's go over to stereo. I heard a comment come in. Okay, many such cases. Thank you. Paul?
It's 2021, so some of these old phrases need amendment. Hell hath no fury like a post-wall woman.
Yes, that's going to be a household saying in about 20 years. Karen is an anti-white slur. Yes, it is. And that's fine, because, you know what? I don't actually care. And it's funny in this particular case because the old gentleman... Well, let me just see if I can play the video. Let me see if we can hear the old gentleman calling her a Karen. The old guy's white, by the way, so... Nope, the video will not play. The old gentleman yells repeatedly, right in her face, "Sit down, Karen! Nobody cares, Karen, sit down!" And then a couple other expletives peppered in on top of that. But he just repeatedly calls her a Karen. And it's appropriate. It's appropriate. Let's see. Ben Savage says, how about the latest Karen video on the airplane? Telling guy to put mask on. Hey, welcome, Ben. That's exactly what we're talking about right here. Let's see. She reminds me of the hot wife on Californication. What's funny is the cloth masks really do nothing, but it looks good while on a plane. Yeah. And that's part of the whole narrative crumbling thing, is also that they're coming out now and even saying that the cloth masks do nothing. We always knew since the beginning the cloth masks did nothing, but they're just finally starting to come out and say it. There was, that certain point in time where the N95s ran out, they said, just put anything on your face, anything at all, it doesn't matter. Well, that's flipped now. There was that crazy Asian doctor lady that gets invited onto all those talk shows to basically lead America into the pandemic gulags. She's even saying now the cloth masks do nothing. So, Jason, what's up, Jason? Welcome. Let's jump to the next story here. This is a big one that just happened today, and it follows in the footsteps of. Who was the other high-profile guy that recently just got banned off of Twitter? Let's go to this Osis and Stereo first before we jump to this story.
When I looked into this incident, it's my understanding that she was having a hissy fit because she couldn't get back to her seat because they were serving drinks. So she started hassling the flight attendants, and then this guy told her to shut up and sit down. And then so she attacked him for telling her to shut up, which might be why the rest of the plane was not on her side. She was already causing a ruckus. But she's obviously a psychopath. I mean, she just wants to have things her way or else. You know how it is.
Perfect. Thank you for that extra clarification on that, Osis. And that even reinforces my point to a greater degree, because it further proves that it's not about COVID. It's about her mentality and her mental state. If you can't to have the patience to stand there for like 5 minutes while the drink cart goes by or whatever, yeah, you might not work out in the society that we've got built here for you. Today, Robert Malone was banned off of Twitter. If you don't know who Robert Malone is, it's probably because you don't spend a lot of time on alt media, because none of the mainstream media will talk about Robert Malone. But Robert Malone just happens to be the gentleman, or one of the gentlemen, involved closely with the creation of mRNA vaccines. So you would think in a society where we're so hell-bent on focusing on the science, looking at science as the truth, just digging anywhere we can for science and things that will lead us out of this pandemic, we would not ban the guy who helped create mRNA vaccines, but that's not the case. Now, we have to ask why, and the answer is because he happened to share a post that, or some article, some information that doesn't make the vaccine look so good. Basically, trying to make the case that the vaccine is actually doing more harm than good to a lot of the population, including the younger population. Thank you, Osis, for letting me know about the audio there. Dari says, we have a lot more of that happening with people low sense of their surroundings. The world doesn't evolve around them. Yeah, that's one of my biggest pet peeves, and it's easy to detect that, is when people, they don't care about anyone but themselves. It's as if they're living in a virtual reality and everybody's actually invisible, except for them, which is quite fascinating. I'd love to be able to do that, just kind of go into that brain for a while. I think it's probably something like that episode of Black Mirror where everyone has the electronics implanted in their head, and that the world has turned into a social media site where if you don't have a good enough relationship or social credit, for example, with somebody, they get blurred out. You can't even actually physically see them with your own eyes. They have to live something like that, right? That's got to be what's happening. Fascinating. I just really don't understand that. But back to Robert Malone. He shared an article about the fact that vaccines may not be as good as we think they are. And I didn't get a chance to go through that full article. But the point is, we're banning the guy who created the technology that we're praising endlessly. And it just happens to coincidentally come on right before Robert Malone is going to be going on Joe Rogan's podcast. Now, if you guys don't know why that's such a big deal, it's because there was Dr. Peter McCullough was recently on Joe Rogan's podcast. It was like one of his most viewed ones of all time. This guy is a super well-studied, well-published guy, and he just gives you a study-by-study example, science view, not opinion view, of what's going on with the COVID stuff, and it doesn't look good for COVID. It doesn't look good for COVID. This is I would say the banning of people like Robert Malone is a symptom or a sign that they know something's happening. They're in panic mode. This is exactly the kind of thing you'd expect somebody to do when they're in panic mode, because we all know that what this is going to do is it's going to draw more attention to Robert Malone's visit to Joe Rogan's podcast, where people will get to listen to 3 or 4 hours of this guy elaborating on studies, information about why the vaccine is not as good as we think it is. So the last thing you would want to do, just in case any of the people from Twitter are watching here, pro tip, Google Streisand effect, and then realize that the last thing you want to do if you want to not draw attention to something or some high-profile person is to ban them off Twitter, especially right before they're going to go on Joe Rogan's podcast. So I'm very much looking forward to this, and I will be. I would not have known that he was going on Joe Rogan's podcast tomorrow if it wasn't for this. So I am one of those viewers who would be watching and absorbing this information from an objective a standpoint as possible. You know, I'm not just going there to listen to him talk trash about the vaccine, but this guy has, I would say, a little bit of credibility since he had involvement in the actual development of the mRNA vaccine. I'm interested in his opinion. Very interested. Another interesting thing that's been presented by some people online that I wanted to mirror here is the fact that we have not heard any information, any kind of interviews or anything at all about public tests being available. I don't know about you guys, but I went to a couple stores this weekend just to see if I can grab a COVID test. There's none. There's none anywhere. Nobody's talked about that. Nobody's talked about ramping up production. Nobody's talked about just like maybe making the U.S. Postal Service drop a couple free ones in everybody's mailbox. Things you would expect to see in an actual pandemic. But of course, this quote-unquote pandemic does not pass the things you would expect to see test, or really any of the things you would expect to see tests. It's just a giant red flag. They're the center of attention at home, and in their mind when at work, in the public, not so much. Yeah, well, that's part of it, Dari. That's what I meant. These women, predominantly women, and the feminized men, don't get me wrong. The men who have the feminized mindset can be just as bad. They are the center of attention everywhere they go. They're not used to having other people tell them no, especially when you're young and beautiful. Guys who are largely simps, pathetic, weak, slimy, small-boned guys are going to just give you anything you want, anything you ask for in those situations. The shortage has been talked about on Fox over the past week. Well, good job, Fox. But the question I'm talking about is a government official telling us this is our plan to roll out testing because we're seeing a conflicting narrative. We're being told to stay at home for, well, up until I think yesterday it was 10 days. Stay at home for 10 days if you think you get COVID, but there's no tests. So what do we do if we think we got COVID? Those scrawny guys, small boned. I'm trying to be creative here. I think we should all implement the aggressive or malicious compliance in this situation again. We should really all just say collectively that we think we've got COVID and we're just going to take 10 days off. Stay at home for 10 days. I just want to make sure I don't want to impose any harm on anybody else by spreading whatever I've got to the poor innocent people at the grocery store. So I'm just going to sit it out for 10 days because I had a headache. And I had a runny nose for 5 minutes after I ate my lunch because I put a lot of hot sauce on it. But runny nose is a symptom of COVID, so I got to play it safe. So malicious compliance, let's all just take 10 days off, guys. What do you think? Can we organize that? I think we should do it. Oh, wait. There's an update. That's right. We can't take 10 days off anymore because Fauci and the rest of the government has caught on to the fact that there are no tests and that 10 days is a little unreasonable when you're expecting the entire country to be infected. And so Fauci just recently came out and provided us with this little update. Isolation period has been cut in half to, quote, keep society running. So thank you, Fauci, for coming out and delivering this guidance from the CDC. So guys, in case you weren't aware, this is, as I am saying, the narrative is starting to shift, starting to crumble. We have been advised to cut our isolation period in half to 5 days from 10 days now from the man himself. And I think it's been 10 days for like a year, maybe even longer. So this isn't a small change that we're seeing here. And actually, of all people on the internet, there was one guy who the least expected personality to come out with a decent take on this, David Pakman. David Pakman is a leftist, let's call him a farmer. He's a farmer, is really what he is. He's not an intellectual. He's not a talk show host. He's a farmer. Tends to his crops, thousands and thousands of acres of NPC crops that he just harvests, farms. He waters them with little dabs of, provocative statements that are open-ended enough for nobody to actually assign any opinions to himself, which is great. Good strategy. I definitely recommend that. But he came out and said Fauci has said so many times during the pandemic that he does not make economic recommendations, only medical. So it's really bizarre to hear him justifying the new CDC guidelines along economic lines, because the justification that Fauci gave, the explanation that Fauci gave for shortening the isolation period from 10 to 5 days was we need to keep society running. Interesting. So Pakman actually picked up on this. And if Pakman is picking up on this, you know what that means, right? Narrative shift so rapid, so quick, that it'll give you whiplash, because even guys like Pakman, who are his primary crop is leftist NPCs, right? So if he says something like this, that is going to wipe out half his crop. So if he's even saying this, he knows, you can tell there's something going on. So I thought that was interesting, a good take, one that I did not actually capture. Credit where credit's due. David Pakman with a good take on that. Let's see. They've ruined the cruise industry. Yeah, there's been a lot of interesting things happening in the cruise world. The cruises of fully vaccinated people getting outbreaks, which is head scratcher. There was I believe a Navy ship that came back where literally everybody was vaccinated, and there was an outbreak on there as well. It's becoming impossible to acknowledge that the vaccines do not prevent spread at all, and it's quite shocking that they're surprised. They're surprised that people don't want to take the vaccine when they explicitly state, we're not taking the vaccine because you haven't been clear and open and honest about what's in the vaccine or what it does or what it could do, et cetera, et cetera. And yet they continue to just completely just sweep it under the rug. We're still not going to come out and admit that it does not prevent spread, things like that, which only really exacerbates the problem as they see it, because every time this happens, a cruise ship gets an outbreak, a dormitory gets an outbreak, a Navy ship gets an outbreak. We see it. It just further solidifies those who don't want to take the vaccine's opinion. It's really amateur public health. It's really what it is. Terrible persuasion, terrible public health measures, and terrible guidance and leadership overall, I would say. The Fauci guy should have been fired a long time ago. Not because Fauci's a bad guy necessarily, but because he's terrible at messaging in public health. Get somebody else in there that can actually get the right messages out. Josh says, has anyone ever told you look like Elon Musk? Yes. Many times. Many, many times. I don't see it personally, but I think it's one of those things where there's just one particular facial feature that looks like Elon Musk, and I don't know what it is. Maybe it's like the cheek lines or something. I don't know. We got Paul in stereo.
So first of all, it's bizarre. We got Anthony Fauci creating economic policy and Bill Gates creating medical policy. So that's absurd.
Why not?
But I'm reminded of that phrase that you know who rules over you based on who you cannot criticize. And yeah, you cannot criticize Bill Gates or Anthony Fauci. They're not elected. They're not accountable. And yet they have real power. They have true sovereignty. And, that's just exactly how our system works. It's totally deranged and totally decentralized and totally dysfunctional.
Yeah, I think the one thing that's become most clear to me over the last year and a half is that the government is incompetent, not in the fact that, like we thought previously, where it was incompetence, but it was hidden under layers of bureaucracy, layers of other government. Now it's just playing out right in the open. Like when they came out and said, Biden's press statement about the families facing a winter of death and severe illness. It's just so many just rookie things we're seeing that really, it's good in a way because it makes me not worried at all about what they're going to do. There's amateurs. These are low skilled amateur people in the government. So we got Osis in stereo.
He should have been fired. He should be arrested, and he should go to trial, and he should be in jail because he has lied under oath to Congress, which is illegal.
Yeah.
He pretends he doesn't know what immunity is. He lies about gain-of-function research. He illegally funded the research through NIH and NIAD with his buddy Peter Daszak in the Eco Health Alliance. Fauci's a criminal, and he belongs in jail. He's not a doctor. He's nothing but a lying scumbag.
Okay. Yeah, that's a pretty accurate case. I think you're right. We've seen him. Another great point when I'm talking about the incompetence of the government. If I'm being as generous as possible, I could say that he just didn't know what he was talking about when he lied in those congressional hearings. But we know that he. Do we know? See, I'm programmed to just think about incompetence over malice, and I think that's a good thing to err on that side. But it's probably correct in this instance. He lied to Congress, and he's trying to bend the definitions of immunity, vaccines, of the gain of function research, you name it. That's the other thing, guys. 2021, we saw so many definition changes of words. That should be a massive red flag for anybody. If you had a vaccine that worked. This is one of my favorite things to watch Scott Adams do, is try to justify saying that vaccines work. If vaccines worked, they wouldn't have to change the definition of vaccine on the official CDC website. They wouldn't have to change the definitions of immunity on the official CDC website. They only work if you define them as a therapeutic. And if we're going to define a vaccine as a therapeutic, well then, guess what also works? Exposure to the sun, cardiovascular exercise, weightlifting, eating vegetables work in the same capacity. The vaccines work because they reduce your chance of severe illness or death. If that's the definition of work, well then eating lettuce is a vaccine now. Where's my logic wrong? Tell me where my logic is wrong. If you say vaccines work because they reduce illness and reduce severity of illness and death, how is a box of spinach not a vaccine? How is sitting out in the sun for 15 minutes not a vaccine? All right, let's go to... We got Russian bots in the chat. Actual, literal Russian bots in the chat, which I appreciate. You know, they're pumping up the viewer count. Maybe I paid for those. Maybe I didn't. Not going to comment on that. Let's go to the next story here. On the collapse of the COVID narrative. Now, Biden came out and just... Speaking of thin-boned, Biden just came out and snapped in half and just admitted that he's done, like, trying to figure out a federal response to COVID. This is hilarious. Greg Abbott's tweeting on Twitter, of all places. He says, Biden says there's no federal solution to COVID and that this gets solved at a state level. He should immediately end the unconstitutional federal mandates. The Texas solution is no mandates and personal responsibility. Well, I mean, personal responsibility is that's just Nazi white supremacy right there. We all know that. But the video that won't play is a clip of Biden saying, quote, there is no federal solution. This gets solved at a state level, which flies completely 100%, 180 degrees contrary to everything that he said during the election season and his whole early presidency where I'm not going to shut down the economy. I'm going to shut down COVID 8,000 times over and over and over. You can find compilations of him saying that online. I'm not going to shut down America. I'm going to shut down the virus. Now, he's correct in that this gets solved at a state level. But does he get away with this scot-free? Just because he's correct. Does he get away with this scot-free? I say no, because if he believed that there was no federal solution all along, then why hasn't he been empowering states to do their own thing? Why has he been fighting people like Abbott and DeSantis when they're... I mean, he literally just came out, a few weeks back. I can remember when he said DeSantis is... I wish DeSantis would help us actually fight this pandemic or something like that. Obviously not kind of showing any visual public support for the governors or for any notion of solving this at a state level. This idea coming out of Biden right now, seems to be brand new. And I say that he snapped because I think it's just like the fact that the vaccines aren't doing what they're told. It's unavoidable now to see the difference in states like Florida and Texas and California. It cannot be ignored. It cannot be covered up by any level of misinformation in the media, by any, dog isn't barking, non-coverage type situations. No matter how much they try to not cover it, it cannot be hidden. And I think finally, Biden and, well, at least the staffers, not Biden. Biden has no idea what's going on. The staffers in the White House have finally admitted that they can't fight the states and they can't fight the visual persuasion that people are noticing in the differences between the states. So Biden has given up, folks. This is pretty huge. He has given up a federal response. There is no federal solution to COVID. Now, he says this, but we're still seeing cases in Florida, for example, where they're trying to offer the monoclonal antibodies, and some of the health officials in Florida are coming out and saying the federal government is stifling greatly our ability to offer and supply monoclonal antibodies. So you got to always look at somebody's actions over their words to determine what they actually believe. And in this particular case, he's saying that it's going to be solved at a state level, but we're still not seeing any kind of real true effort on his part to allow and empower the states to do what they need to do to get this thing done with. So again, a very poorly calibrated statement from the White House here, which just shows an amateurish level of communication because it flies in the face of everything they've said so far, number one. Number two, it doesn't align with any of the actions they've been taking either now or previously, which you would expect to see if you're going to see a narrative shift. So this is just another perfect example of incompetence at the highest levels of our government, which I think is just great. I really love seeing the captain of our ship just snapping in half and admitting after a year that he has no idea what he's doing and he can't stop it. That's similar to a situation I had yesterday when I was at the bowling alley, and there was a mix-up in my league. There was actually no league bowling that day, but the stand-in manager, as the people that were arguing with her were like, we were supposed to bowl today. She literally just threw her hands up and she was like, well, you know what? You have the phone number for the manager. You could just call him. She just gave up, just snapped like a toothpick, right in half, under pressure. This is the level of competence that we're seeing. A bowling alley assistant manager is running the country right now. I would expect to see a little higher caliber of response. That's the point I'm trying to make here. Let's see. Dar says if we can only get them to hit the like button, the Russian bots. Yeah, I need to pay a little extra for the Russian bots that hit the like button on the way out before they get banned, at least. Holly says our booster rates are dismal, yet the premier is not enforcing them, nor is the federal up here. Okay, well, again, I think everyone's starting to realize that boosters really don't do anything, and stack on top of that the fact that we have other treatments coming out now as well. You got the molnupiravir, the pill you take, just like a little $700 pill you pop. Well, you're not paying for that. The government's paying for it on your behalf to Pfizer, of course, because why wouldn't it? So we have other opportunities besides the booster, and it's going to get to a point to where they're going to have a hard time even justifying the booster because there's going to be so many other opportunities to protect yourself out there with cathedral-approved options like the $700 pill that the whole booster narrative is just going to get diluted quite heavily. $700 Pfizer Mectin. Exactly. That's exactly what it is. Speaking of that, I got some Mexican stuff in the mail the other day. I got some chloroquine, some ivermectino, and some something else. One of the big trifectas for super cheap. So I'm probably not going to have to use it because Omicron is like less than a cold, but I have it on hand. I was forced to look through Mexican pharmacies to get this stuff because the government and the system here in America is so pathetic that, I think you get the point. Continuing on with our crumbling of the narrative, we actually have seen this propagate down through the cathedral-approved media apparati, including the Washington Post. That's right. Jennifer Rubin over at the Washington Post is finally also admitting that Omicron, well, it's not that deadly. It's not that bad. And again, guys, this is like a 180 degree. Wait till you hear the language that they use in this once I can actually get the article up and running here, because it's going to blow your mind. Opinion article from Jennifer Rubin over at the Washington Post, who is a complete NPC mutant. This is the worst of the worst. Jennifer Rubin. Opinion: Biden is learning not to fret over vaccine deniers. I love the framing. Okay, Jennifer gets an A+ on the framing. This is not amateur framing. Biden is learning not to fret over vaccine deniers is a great way to reframe the fact that he's giving up on a federal solution. Well done, Jennifer. Credit for that. She says, almost 2 years after the country first shut down to protect itself against the coronavirus pandemic, President Biden is grasping a changing environment, both medical and political. The result could well encourage responsible Americans to get on with their lives while allowing recalcitrant vaccine refusers to face the consequences of their reckless conduct. Okay, again, good propaganda, good language. You gotta toss in, pepper in some words like reckless, recalcitrant, refusers. Really good persuasion. But then she goes on to say, on the medical front, not only have we developed multiple vaccines, including boosters, along with oral treatments for those who get COVID-19, but we also now have far more reasonable rules for quarantine, backing up the CDC coming out. And this is how you know this is a narrative shift, because much like establishing a trend or drawing a line in mathematics, you can't draw a line with 1 point. You have to have multiple points to connect, in order to draw a line, in order to form a trend, in order to see trends. And this is the second line after the CDC recommendations. The actual media apparati are approving and reinforcing the narrative lockstep. So they're coming out and saying federal health officials on Monday shortened the recommendation time for Americans infected with coronavirus should isolate from 10 days to 5 if they are asymptomatic. A decision they said was driven by a growing body of research about when people are most infectious. Oh, wait a second. I thought you said it was because we wanted to keep the economy rolling. Oh, well, a little bit of a narrative misalignment there. But anyway, she goes on to say, blah, 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 10 days, et cetera, et cetera. But here's where it gets good. She says, Omicron may be highly contagious, but the media's obsession with case numbers is unwarranted. What? Washington Post saying we should no longer care about case numbers. She says it's only the willfully defiant, unvaccinated Americans who remain at risk. At risk of what? Getting it or having severe illness? Because it's definitely not the former. Frankly, there's not much anyone can do about them other than treat them when they wind up in emergency rooms. Still making sure that she's offering a solution while conveying her disdain for half the population of America. And goes on to say that Biden has also recognized the problem of the unvaccinated is actually the responsibility of red state governors, again, wasting no opportunity to blame conservatives, who have hindered vaccination efforts and encouraged risky behavior. So you see what's happening here. Every possible chance we can to change the narrative while also still being on the offensive, attacking our enemies and doing anything we can to discourage unity. That's what's happening. So she takes as many pot shots as possible at red states, conservative people, recalcitrant vaccine refusers, etc., on the road that she's on the path to saying that Omicron and COVID is not as deadly or as serious as we think it is. So that's how a narrative shift happens, guys. Remember, like the CNN story with Chris Cuomo, the firing of him. It's every opportunity, no matter if it's good or bad for them, if it's a narrative change, whatever it may be, they're going to use it to stay on the offensive. Same exact thing. Now, the gist of the article is that, well, this is actual Jennifer Rubin's Twitter post summarizing her article. It says, as we recognize that COVID-19 is not a deadly or even severe disease for the vast majority of responsible Americans. Hold up. Stop. Wait a minute. Right there. We got to rewind. Jennifer Rubin, leftist, mentally ill, Washington Post writer, says, as we recognize, who's we, first of all? Because you're catching up to where a lot of people were about a year, maybe even a year and a half ago, because we knew this wasn't a deadly or even severe disease way back then. And now, 2 years later, Jennifer Rubin is saying, as we recognize that COVID-19 is not a deadly or even severe disease for the vast majority of responsible Americans, we can stop agonizing over cases and focus on those who are hospitalized or at risk of dying. Fascinating. This is a fascinating shift in narrative. Do you guys see what happened here? So almost 2 years later, she's finally catching up with us where we were. There's a chart floating around of all these conspiracy theories and how they've all come out to be proven true over time. Or people, back in 2020, it was a conspiracy to say they wanted to do vaccine passports. It was a conspiracy to say there were going to be government mandates on the vaccines. It was a conspiracy theory that we were going to be locked down for eternity, et cetera, and they've all come out to be proven true. This can be added to that list, not necessarily as I don't know if you can say it's a conspiracy theory, but there were a lot of people, including me, who were saying it is not a deadly disease, and they are just now coming to this conclusion, this realization, not because the facts are changed or there's new information available, but because you can see the pipeline of the narrative shift coming down from the White House through the CDC and into the media apparatus. This is the clearest picture we have ever had of a new narrative coming down the pipeline. Do you guys see what's happening here? It's as if we were drilling into the core of Antarctica and we pulled out, just these perfect layers of the fossilized records. We could see exactly what happened in a timeline. Government to CDC to media apparatus, everybody's in lockstep now. And it's a complete, not 180, well, it's about a complete 180 from where we were just 4 weeks ago. And I told you guys several times on multiple podcasts recently, and I asked the question, when was the last time you heard anything about death counts on the news? They don't talk about death counts. Now that the case counts are coming back, mild cases, by the way, they're not really getting a lot of hospitalizations, but now that the case counts, the chart looks really bad because the cases are now like higher or as high as they were before Biden even got in, which makes him look bad. Now that the cases are high, it's all of a sudden, oh, we shouldn't really, the cases, don't worry about the cases, guys. That's not a big deal. We got to focus on the real people who are at risk here, okay? Don't look at that chart that looks really bad right there. So this is a complete and utter failure on behalf of the Biden administration, but I don't think anyone here is shocked to see it. Let's see. Paul says, literally 18 months ago, the data came into irrefutable focus, May 2020. Yep, pretty much. There were a while you could order directly from Canada for often used pharma drugs. Yeah, I think you probably still can, but they're way more expensive than getting them from Mexico. And for those of you people, oh, you're getting the drugs from Mexico, don't worry. I got like a 20-piece drug testing kit. I'm going to test it for everything, including fentanyl. I'm not a retard. I'm not sucking horse paste. You guys should know better. You think I would just take some stuff willy-nilly from Mexico? Come on now. If you're really on it, even April, not even a month into the initial lockdown, you could have divined this. Of course, yes. If you were really based, you could have opposed shutdown because liberty. Yeah. See, I was never on board with like the whole, not fully on board with the whole let's oppose the lockdown because of liberty, because we didn't know. Immediately on, we didn't really know. So 2 weeks, it's going to hurt, but we can do 2 weeks. Let's just lock down for 2 weeks. But we need to have a post-situational report done after the 2 weeks to say, did it work? Did it not work? Yes or no? Should we continue? And what should we do differently? That's what you would expect to see a capable, competent civilization do. We didn't do anything resembling that. We just said, whoa, look at the death counts over here. Death surge. Chiron's on CNN says death surge. Dari says the thing was used as a tool to get rid of Trump, period. It's looking more and more like that. Yes, sir. Well, not just to get rid of Trump, but again, attack your enemies while also getting something else out of it. Like I just talked about, a lot of people made a lot of money off this. A lot of people made a lot of money. And if we were to, probably the most reasonable opinion to take in the whole situation is simply follow the incentives. Follow the money. How could that be a biased opinion in any situation? Follow the money. Follow the incentives. And if you were to do that, if you were to follow the money, follow the incentives, it would lead you right back to old Pfizer and the pharmaceutical companies. Let's see. Matt says the ones behind Biden are gearing up to make interstate travel a vaccinated class privilege. Maybe. I've been hearing some rumblings about that. Yeah, that's gonna get weird. I don't think they'll be able to pull it off because they tried that in Australia. I don't think that really worked. And I don't think there's enough. You'd have to recruit the military to do that, I think. But then again, if you look at what happened in Canada when that big storm happened, you could just knock out one freeway and you pretty much cut off travel to big portions of the entire country. So our freeway system is our weakest link right now. We need Elon Musk to dig some tunnels. Elon, we need tunnels to circumvent the government authoritarianism. Maybe he's got tunnels ready to go. Maybe he's got tunnels that we don't even know about, and as soon as they start locking down travel, he's like, hey guys, tunnels. Willy-nilly is the phrase of the day at work. There you go. You're welcome. Dari says, remember the WHO delayed the news concerning the initial spread of the virus. Yeah, I mean, there is a laundry list of things that they have done incorrectly that we could go over. Laundry list. Okay, what do we got up next? We got anybody in stereo? Stereo's clear. I got Pac-Man, I got Fauci, Omicron. Yep. So let's go to the Omicron. What was the narrative when we first... This is the final snap, crackle, pop, and the whole narrative switch here. What was the narrative with Omicron? it was that there was no, it was much more severe for children, right? Remember that when it was still floating around Africa before it made its way over here? We were told and we were hearing, and I remember specifically talking about the fact that they said it was more deadly for children. And we thought, man, how convenient is that? Because right as we're pushing to vaccinate children in America, a variant pops out of nowhere that magically happens to affect children even worse than adults. How about that? Well, it turns out that that actually is not the case. So doctors now in New York are admitting that not only is they're not seeing any evidence that this Omicron is more deadly for children, but they willingly spread that information early on in order to persuade parents to vaccinate their children. That's right. So they tried to scare parents into vaccinating their children with fake news that Omicron was going to hurt children more so than adults. And I seem to have lost the article here, but you can find a video online of a health official from New York saying that verbatim, we did it because we wanted to persuade adult parents to vaccinate their children. And even places like, I think it was the New York Times, I seem to have lost the article, but even places like the New York Times are admitting that Omicron is not any more dangerous for children than it is for adults. Let's see here. Holly's says the highway was reopened today thanks to new crews from the Trans Mountain expansion. No one in government or legacy media is mentioning it. Well, there you go. Thank you to the pipeline workers. Yeah, see, how it was closed. Basically, your travel was locked down for a couple weeks at least. One freeway. People don't realize that. The freeways are our bottlenecks here. And if they want to, they could easily shut down travel in America by going after those. Let's go to Paul.
Just to be totally out of sync here, can we not appreciate Marjorie Taylor Greene calling for a national divorce from the East and West Coast and taxes on Californians and New Yorkers moving to, Texas and Florida? That is a hardcore, definitely got a boner. That's all I'm saying.
I didn't hear that, but I know, a lot of people are hot on the secession narrative, and I'd be on board with that too if I thought it was feasible. The only reason I'm not really on board with that is because I don't think it's particularly feasible. I think it's going to be on the onus is on the individuals to kind of reform their own communities. It'd be like the Pilgrims fleeing England or whatever, and instead of fleeing, saying, "Can you please just let us have our own section where we can do whatever we want?" I don't know. Besides, it's more American to embrace our frontiersman spirit and do it on our own anyway. But yeah, I agree with you. That's a good call on her part. Let's see here. Yeah, apparently I didn't actually mark that article. Okay, anyway, let's continue on. I think that's it for the COVID stuff. As it should be pretty blatantly obvious to you guys at this point that the narrative is entirely shifting. I don't know where it's going, but with Omicron coming on as basically a self-spreading vaccine, and the vaccine is looking weaker and weaker every day, I think we're pretty much on our way out of this. There's going to be some residual effects of the medical-induced authoritarian state that we're living in, but we're gonna move on swiftly to global warming or social credit scores or something along those lines eventually. Who knows? All right. Let's jump to the next story. What do we got? Hospitals. Oh, this is okay. So this is actually still kind of COVID, but from a different angle. This is something I'm surprised we didn't actually see sooner, but now we're starting to see the ramifications of pumping people full of propaganda nonstop, pumping them full of fear for 2 years straight with no real legitimate information, no real guidance on what to do. Again, I think the biggest problem that it's going to be demonstrated by this story is the fact that we are offering no real guidance for people in terms of what to do in the middle of this COVID pandemic. From WCAX 3 Somewhere in Vermont, a local news station is reporting that COVID positive Vermonters with no symptoms are clogging up ERs. Ooh, that one feels good because we hear so many stories about, oh, the unvaccinated people are clogging up the ER. Oh, well, guess who's doing it now? People who are going to the ER with no symptoms because why? Because they got a positive test somewhere along the line, rapid test that really doesn't mean much, high false positive rate, no symptoms at all, asymptomatic, but they go to the hospital because they've been pumped full of fear that they need to get tests, they need to get treatments, et cetera, et cetera. From Rutland, Vermont, some Vermonters were able to find antigen tests and then test positive, are clogging up emergency rooms. The emergency department at the Rutland Regional Medical Center has been overwhelmed with asymptomatic folks. Dr. Rip Hildebrandt is RRMC's medical doctor. He says people who test positive with a rapid test go to the emergency room looking for a PCR test. The Vermont Hospital Association says it's hearing similar stories from other parts of the state. It's happening statewide. Now, is there some particular propaganda that's unique to Vermont that might be causing this? Or is this also happening in other parts of the country and we just haven't heard about it yet? I tend to think the latter is probably the case. He says the only time to go to the ER is if you have a positive test and are very sick, which, kind of implied by the name emergency room. Generally, you would only go there in an emergency. It's, quote, it's not so much of the beds that are the precious resource, it's staff. It's the staff at this time. So we have to have some of our clinical staff providing care to those people, and they can't provide care to the folks in the ER. So Hildebrandt says the department PCR testing is the best option for asymptomatic people, even though the results take a little longer. So there you go. The people who are rushing into... Now, think about this. Why would they need a PCR test if they got a rapid test and they already know they're positive? Are they trying to get a true positive test result? Or are they afraid because they want to get some kind of treatment? I probably think it's more the fact they're afraid, because I can't think of a situation where a rapid test would not suffice to give your doctor, to give it your work, not to your doctor, but to give your work. If you got COVID, you got to take a couple days off, give that to your work, give it to your school. If your kid can't go to school, he's sick, you got to give that to the people at the school, et cetera, et cetera. There's no situation where a rapid test would not be sufficient. So why are they going to the hospital if it's not for fear? I don't know. Ben says this is a great show. Thank you, Ben. Appreciate that. We're closing in towards the end of the show, or maybe about halfway. Make sure you like, subscribe, etc., etc. I got some big news at the end of the show, actually, you guys are going to want to hear. Paul says it's not secession, and no, it isn't feasible legally. Neither was the Revolutionary War. Totally illegal. Yeah. I just don't like waiting for people to do the job that I could do myself. You know what I mean? Yeah, it'd be nice to have all the amenities that the state can provide and have that federal to state pipeline still intact to some degree. But at the end of the day, I'm trying to be self-sufficient anyway. So Dari says they shut down millions of barrels a day in the U.S., forcing to buy from the Middle East at a higher price. How stupid is this president? Yeah, we could talk about, I could have a whole stream on the stupid things that have happened during his administration. They also continue to leverage home school versus the brick and mortar school attendance to keep the virus hype going. Yeah. How accurate are the rapid tests? Not very accurate. I don't think we have any actual numbers because even the tests they do in them aren't very accurate. I've seen numbers ranging across the board. At the end of the day, I would say they're not accurate. Maybe 80% accurate, something along those lines. Maybe even less. And I think they've said that themselves too. Let's see. They're preferring everyone for higher gas prices over the next few months. Interesting. Why? Like trying to keep them stay home, stuff like that. I don't know how they would be trying to do that. Let's go to the next story of the day. This was actually not COVID related, but just as depressing, downing. Not good. Not good at all. TikTok, probably the most popular app used by children on their phones that they're on 15, 16 hours a day, is quote-unquote brainwashing people by promoting videos of quote-unquote cool trans surgery with videos that have been viewed about 26 billion times. Billion with a B. That's right. TikTok videos on trans surgery viewed 26 billion times. That number may seem high to you if you're familiar with things like YouTube video view counts, things like that. It's because TikToks are like 30 seconds long. They're tailor-made to the mentally ill population of people who have self-induced ADHD, which I don't think it's actually a real thing, but it's a behavioral pattern that can be learned, and this is the type of stuff that gives them ADHD. So they're just pumped full of transgender propaganda all day long, just telling them how great, how cool it is. Look at this guy. Isn't he? He's so cool, but he happened to have also got surgery. He used to be a she. He has his pronouns is his, him, her, or his, him now. Campaigners have accused TikTok of helping children to be brainwashed, quote unquote, by hosting viral social media videos that promote changing sex as cool. Material posted by transgender influencers on the social networking service in which they provide advice on transitioning and accessing hormone therapies has been seen by millions of young viewers. You guys remember when I talked about how if we wanted to fix everything, there's a long pipeline of things we need to fix? Okay, well, we're up. Think about this. When the mutants who are running everything now were kids, they didn't have propaganda feeding directly into their skulls at 3 videos per minute like this. So think about what these kids are going to grow up into after consuming this much content, this much propaganda. More than a quarter of British TikTok users are aged between 15 and 25. More than a quarter between 15 and 25. And children aged between 4 and 15 who sign up spend an average of 69 minutes on the app each day, according to TikTok's own data. Jesus Christ, dude. TikToks are like, 30 seconds max? So they're spending 70 minutes on average. 4-year-olds, as low as 4. 70 minutes on average. What is that? Let's be hyper conservative and say that's 30 seconds of video. So we'll just say 140 videos. They're watching 140 videos a day on TikTok. A lot of them, of course, are promoting things like this and other mutant behaviors and mutant cultures and mutant-related ideologies, etc., etc. Analysis by the Mail on Sunday shows that the videos with the hashtag trans, have been seen more than 26 billion times. And we've got a screenshot of one of those examples here from some TikTok user. Says, my parents were shocked when I came out as trans. This is presumably a dude pretending to be a girl. TikTok signed a partnership earlier this year with Stonewall. How about that? TikTok, which is a primarily Chinese, but also mostly largely American-owned run company, signed a partnership with a pro-LGBT organization, controversial, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender rights charity to promote this material. So they were paid to promote it from a LGBT mutant outlet. One popular transgender TikTok influencer, Bella Fitzpatrick, raised $20,000 from followers in less than 3 months, £20,000, to fund private gender reassignment surgery. Wait a second. Why do you need to pay for private surgery if you're in the UK? Shouldn't that be provided free? Where are my UK people at? Why are people not being able to get their nuts chopped off for free? That's what I want to know. The 19-year-old has 700,000 followers and explains the process of transitioning, including her experience of bypassing NHS waiting lists. Question answered. Another, Alex Consani, 18 years old, who has more than 680,000 followers. She went viral 5 years ago. She's 18. She went viral 5 years ago. That means she was on there at 13. Oh, no. And when she was 12, was featured on Cosmopolitan magazine as a trans model. Because kids definitely don't look at magazines or models as role models and behavioral models. No, that's not. Well, yes, and that's exactly why they paid them to do this, right? One of her videos, seen 2.3 million times, tells followers that they are one estrogen pill away from a glow up. One estrogen pill away from a glow up. Meaning, presumably, that glow up, they explain it right here. Glow up is a mental, physical, and emotional transformation for the better. So guys, just take the pill. Take the estrogen pill, and then you're physically, mentally, emotionally going to be transformed from Timmy into Tina, right? A channel featuring influencer Jason Jowett, shows the process of transitioning and carrying out reassignment surgery. That's awesome. Look at me chop off my body parts. One video includes a caption, quote, "Heal with me after top surgery," a reference to a reconstructive chest operation. Heal with me after top surgery. What is this? Why is this entertainment? This thing just had her body mutilated and is now promoting this as some kind of pro-social activity on the most popular social media platform on the planet today to primarily young kids. Awesome. I can't see how this is going to go wrong at all. This is just great, guys. Yeah. Just fantastic. I mean, the stories go on and on, but you get the point. This is intentional, right? We all know that. And TikTok is more than happy to accept money to pump this kind of stuff out. They were sitting there doing it for free like chumps. Can you believe that? Oh my God. Well, they weren't doing it for free. Obviously, they're getting paid in ad revenue and whatnot. But, getting explicitly paid to pump propaganda, shoo. That's, you get to destroy America and get paid at the same time. Again, if you can do two things at once, get two birds stoned at the same time, then why wouldn't you, right? We got some stereos pollen in here. We got Osis.
It's only tangentially related, but there was a report that came out that a bunch of bread tubers were getting backdoor government funding to be pro-lockdown. So all of the big-time socialists and communists are on the side of big government while trying to pretend that they're not, and they're for the proletariat, and they're taking money straight from the government. Pretty ironic.
Mm-hmm.
One of the big ones they talked about was a tranny, male to female, named Philosophy Tube. He's a whack job for sure. I don't know if he still has a dick or not, but you do the math. There's some weird shit going on where government's dabbling in. They're trying to mind fuck everyone.
Well, regardless of whether or not they're trying to mind that for everyone, we can all acknowledge that they understand how to get to the kids. Okay, it's not through CNN or MSNBC. I mean, they got obviously the propaganda machines full blast on there, but they're paying streamers, paying TikTok. See, now people who are maybe of the older, more mature, wise persuasions don't know what Twitch is. They don't know what streaming is. They don't know that's a primary, or it maybe the primary method of entertainment consumption right now for young people in the West. Streaming and watching other random people like I'm doing right now. You're watching a stream, but imagine watching me for 8 hours a day, every single day, talking nonstop about commie propaganda and how great it is that I chop my nuts off and how you should do it too. That's what we're talking about here. So they know that's where to get to the kids, where to get them at, and I have not heard anything about this Philosophy Tube dude, but I know there is a couple high-profile trannies floating around on YouTube that get a lot of attention, a lot of reinforcement from the cathedral. Let's see. The before and after looks like she went trans race too. Yeah. Well, maybe she's trying to be white. He's trying to be white. She's trying to be white. Sorry. Jesus. So yeah, this is again not boding well for the future. Paul.
I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but what's really the difference between conversion therapy and trans surgery? They both are essentially the same thing. There's something wrong with you, and we can fix it. They can dress it up all they want, but I'm trying to be devil's advocate. Is that so off base?
Well, see, what you're failing to recognize is the abundant database of knowledge and studies that prove that having physical surgery done to your body really helps these people out a lot. It really does. And if you can't tell, it's pure sarcasm because there is no such large databases of studies or information that show that this kind of stuff really does anything at all. If anything, the biggest story that we're not talking about there is the amount of regret that it creates. And The detransitioners. Nobody wants to hear about the detransitioners, right? We could call it a detransition, but it is just a transition. And to hide their stories, isn't that being anti-transition? Even though it's just a different transition. It's a lot to keep up with. Let's get another one here.
I have to echo this, and sorry for the squeaking in the background. The dryer's running again. You really got to go on to Twitter and look at the national divorce and just read the comments. Just it's not even cope. Just the people who don't understand how the country functions. Like, yeah, the red states won't. Like, they think red America will just collapse. It's like, do you know where all the truckers work, where they all live? It's like 80% what we would call red America. And what is it? Semi truck driver is like the number one occupation in like almost 30 states, and it's everything in the Midwest, everything mountain states, just the Great Plains. It's ridiculous. It's
Yep.
it would be so funny.
Yeah, again, it's one of those situations where I kind of want them to get what they're asking for, you know? In that particular case, obviously it'd be catastrophic, but wouldn't that feel great to just watch them go into a Walmart or their whatever degenerate stores they go to and then just see there's no products at all in the entire place? It would almost be worth it. It would almost be worth it. Let's go to a different story, a change of pace. And it's actually good news. I don't know if you guys saw this or not, but I wanted to mention it because stuff like this we don't talk about enough. And personally, I've said this many times, but I could do a whole podcast just on science stuff because I'm so interested. But I wanted to share some good news, give you a little bit of hope for humanity, because humanity can actually still do real things. We can actually still do science and engineering. And the proof of that is the recent launch of the James Webb Telescope. Have you guys heard about this? James Webb Telescope? Yeah, the bots are out in force tonight. I don't know what's going on. Putin is they're really targeting me for some reason. James Webb Telescope is a hyper advanced, probably the pinnacle of human technology. If you could put the summation of human achievement into one, rocket ship, then this would be the payload that would describe that. The James Webb Telescope has officially launched and is starting to unfurl its giant sun shield in space. So what's happening here is we have created a massive, big telescope that we're launching into space, and it's kind of like a transformer because you can't put a telescope on a rocket ship and then just launch it into space. It has to be folded up, transformer. This is a real-life transformer, okay? This is the real Omicron right here. And there are so many things that could go wrong with this, so many feats of insane, marvelous engineering and human intelligence that goes into this that I would strongly recommend to all of you that you should look up some videos online, read about it, listen about it, just see the engineering feat that had to go into the James Webb Telescope, because it is absolutely, I would say it's, this is the kind of stuff that we want to see in a futuristic dystopia. We want to see some high tech, awesome, like mind blowing stuff. Now, I did a little bit of research on it. I'm fascinated in space. I think we do need to get into space. And I don't fully understand all of the engineering that goes into this, but just to give you a little snapshot of what we're dealing with here. This was like 40% lighter than the last big telescope we sent up, the Hubble or whatever, because, well, not only because the materials are lighter, but it's also like much, much larger. So imagine making something that's way bigger, but also way lighter. The telescope itself, the module that takes the pictures, has to operate at 7 degrees Kelvin. Now, I know what a lot of you are thinking. What? 7 degrees who? Kevin? Who's Kevin? No, Kelvin. It's a unit of heat measurement, which is actually 7 degrees away from absolute zero. The coldest possible temperature that you can get in the entire universe is 0 degrees Kelvin. This telescope has to operate at 7 degrees Kelvin. Can you imagine how they had to test this on planet Earth? They had to create giant vacuum tubes with hyper advanced cooling mechanisms. There's a lot that went into this, and I think it's time we need to step back and realize that while largely I talk about the fact that humanity is crumbling, we're incompetent, our IQ is declining across the board, we can't do anything great, and I think I just said on the last strain that we aren't capable of creating any great works anymore. This telescope has been in creation for like 25 years. 25 years for one launch where 1,000 variables could go wrong and this thing could just evaporate into a trillion pieces in midair or in low orbit or in the middle of space. If one little teeny tiny speck of dust hits that thing in space, it's completely gone. It's done, right? So we can let's at least acknowledge that there's a small portion of society, even though it's inefficient, it's slow because this was developed by NASA and we could have probably done this 20 years ago if we put the funding towards it. Maybe not because some of the technology is cutting edge, but the point is, wouldn't it be great if we had a society where we allocated, instead of 0.0001% of our funding towards space exploration and technological advancement, we allocated like 10% of our government funds to things like just general R&D for society with things like this. Now, a lot of people are asking, maybe some people are going to be asking, Jeremy, what are they going to do with the telescope? They're going to take pictures of. What's it going to do for us? Well, the answer that you'll get from them is, of course, we want to figure out where we came from. Big picture questions, where we came from, what happened at the beginning of the universe. Because try and tell me that it's not fascinating that this telescope, somebody made a comparison that if you put, I believe it was a candle on the moon, and you try to look at it with the naked eye, this telescope can detect light sources like 20 times less intense than that. Okay, so we're talking about galaxies and objects in space that are so distant that we're going to be looking at them as if they existed right after the Big Bang. Okay, 3 billion years ago, we can see things because, again, the farther you look in space, you're looking at something that happened because the light takes a lot of time to travel to us. We're literally looking back in time with this telescope. And if you don't see the scientific ramifications of that, you need to spend some time doing a little imagination. You need to crank up your imagination. You need to look at, all the scientific discoveries that have come from space exploration before. And I think this is a great step forward. It's a positive thing. We can all just say, hey, you know what, humanity? We did a little something. We did something cool. And personally, I am looking forward to seeing high-res pictures of galaxies that are 3 billion years in the past. Tell me that's not cool. Let's see. A meteor is not going to hit the Earth. Don't look up. Yeah, so there's a new movie that just came out called Don't Look Up about a meteor hitting the Earth. And I'm not sure if I want to watch it or not. I'm getting mixed reviews. I don't have Netflix, so I don't readily have it available to me anyway, but I heard it could be pretty funny. Have you looked at the XXX sites lately? A lot of mixing agendas, probably government funded. I don't know what you're talking about there with that one, Ben. Hubble was incredible at its time. The deep space images that started coming back blew minds. Exactly. So think of the images that we got with Hubble. Now multiply that by like 100. Because that's what this satellite is going to be able to do. The images that came back with Hubble were literally absolutely mind-boggling. And this is going to be even better. Finally, and on top of that, you've got Elon Musk coming in saying things like, we could be on Mars in 5 years. He was just on a podcast with Lex Friedman a couple days ago. I recommend watching that as well. If you want to just shift your brain away from all this BS that's happening, aside from the fact that it's slow news day, slow news week, slow news month in general, it gives you an opportunity to expand your imagination, think more scientifically, think a little bit more positively. There's a lot of good content out there that I think we could be focusing on instead of this stupid COVID stuff. Just like gathering systems has to our... kids are tools. Yep. So it's a comedy. Don't look up. Yeah, I don't know. I might watch it just for the heck of it. But I'm not much of a consumer. Like if a movie just comes out and I hear, hey, it might be funny, I'm not one to just go and watch it. It's got to have some semblance or evidence that it's quality content, quality art, if I'm going to spend the time to go and watch that. And I think that's a decent standard to have. Okay, I think that's about it, guys. I don't have anything else on my content list. I guess the only other thing I would say is be careful who your role models are online in regards to the Jack Murphy stuff that's been going around. And this is where I'll lose some of the viewers who don't know who Jack Murphy is. But in a nutshell, Jack Murphy, just to throw my opinion out into the universe, make sure it's public. Jack Murphy is a guy who proclaims to be like a masculine role model. He runs an organization called the Liminal Order, which does basically similar to what I would want to do in the long run, which is create a group of people who have a similar mindset, eventually kind of want to form a parallel society, right? Well, turns out that old Jack has a lot of stuff in his past that are just starting to come out of nowhere. And the reason it's starting to come out of nowhere is it's not really out of nowhere. It's due to his own actions. Because Jack, while claiming to be masculine, does not act masculine. Again, what did I say earlier in the stream? Judge people by their actions, not by their words. He goes around talking about how masculine he is, right? And then he goes on this podcast with We Are Here, You Are Here, whatever it's called, and gets asked, let's just say, a tough question. Okay? A tough question that could have easily been handled in a mature, funny, brush it off type of manner, but he chose to respond in a manner that was more feminine. That's right. Yeah. Again, we see the femininity shining through in places where we least expect it. And he cracked. He snapped. He yelled. He kind of broke out up against verbally against the host of the podcast there, and that sparked a large chain of events, chain reaction, that led us to where we are today, which is where people are discovering a lot of degenerate stuff that he did with his past that go completely contrary to what he's trying to portray himself as with a masculine role model. So guys, I guess the narrative here, the moral of the story is vet your gurus, okay? Or whatever you want to call them, gurus, your people that you follow on the internet, et cetera, et cetera. Now, personally, I don't care. I don't see any value in digging up the past and trying to attack Jack Murphy over what he has done because I don't have any animosity against him. He didn't do anything bad. He didn't do anything harmful to me or to anyone who follows me or my narrative or, my ideas even. He just happened to have a little bit of a rough past, but there is a little bit of not satisfaction, but something that needs to be acknowledged in the fact that he responded poorly, and he's refusing to acknowledge that he responded poorly to the original question that he got asked. That's what's driving people to feel satisfaction about the fact that his career is like burning down right now. Now, Jack is a guy who's on Tim Pool's podcast regularly. Tim Pool runs like the biggest news podcast on the planet. So he's not an obscure figure. He's out there. He's pretty well known. And he's had many opportunities to just come out and say, clear it up, brush it aside, not sweep it under the rug, which is kind of what he's doing. And he's coming out and he's getting a little offensive with his responses. He's coming out and saying things like, well, these guys are digging up dirt on me. We got to dig up dirt on them. Things like that. It's like, dude, that's exactly the feminine response right there. And he's coming out against people who are in the manosphere, the other masculinity people, masculinity-related YouTubers or online personalities, and calling them feminine for even mentioning or talking about or bringing up these things. So there's a lot of incongruencies happening here, where it's a case that seems like he's acting one way, but acting feminine, calling everybody else feminine, and pretending to be this masculine role model. So it's an interesting situation that he's only making worse on his own. And that's exactly what you would expect to see out of a female psychological personality, is themselves digging themselves into a deeper hole because they can't simply take one sidestep, logically speaking, to resolve the problem or get themselves out of that situation by simply just saying, oh, yep, no, I did that in my past, and, that was funny that I was into that. I can't believe I got into that kind of stuff, but now, thank God, I'm not doing that anymore. That's it. That's all he needed to say on the podcast, and none of this would have happened. But instead, he had an emotional reaction, feminine reaction came out, snapped, and he's reaping the whirlwind. Holy smokes, because it's gotten way worse for him recently. Let's go, Paul.
I posted this verbatim on Malice's Locals. I'll just read it. Jack Murphy, author of Democrat to Deplorable, and he is one, is a right-wing influencer, part of the manosphere, best known for that fact. Additionally, he has the liminal order for $100 a month, and he's frequently on Timcast RL. And about a month ago, he penned an article. It came out that he penned an article supporting cuckoldry. Got grief for it. Sydney Watson on You Are Here read a super chat about it. It went over poorly with him, caused drama. He later came out arguing. It later came out that he also penned an article supporting female or arguing for female rape fantasies. And then finally, the last night, he had a side hustle catering to porn. Watson made a video calling him basically a LARPer, and quartering is basically calling him a grifter, with less than charitable comments of his liminal order from a subscriber.
Yeah, good summation there. Thank you for that. By the way, let's go to. He's got a follow up.
The sum of all this can boil down to kink shaming, a person growing out of, say, a version of themselves, but the relief of someone purporting to be a part of the manosphere, if there's anything, the type of traits ideally best associated with masculinity, like setting barriers, honesty, accountability, and the ability to control your emotions.
Yes.
And this body of evidence, the relief these two things are, is stark. I also don't even care what he does in his spare time, but that is actually the rub. He's portrayed himself as a very particular type of male role model, which has as much incongruity with his audience's expectations as Black Rifle Coffee did with his customers when they came out against Kyle Rittenhouse. It's less about his actions per se than what people expect of you. They thought you were one of them, and they're like,
yes.
Oh, no, you're not.
Right.
You are not at all.
There are people paying hundreds of dollars, potentially even thousands, to join this guy's club. The liminal order, the secret. Oh, we've had everyone that comes into our club. Not just anybody can get in. Our memberships are only open, 2 days of the month or whatever. Imagine trying to get your way into that, and then finding out that the guy that you're paying money to and you see him as your leader, came out to have been confirmed doing this kind of stuff. Yikes. Ouch. I would have to step back and be like, ooh. That's like going all in on a trade, like on a cryptocurrency or a stock, and then just getting annihilated, and then having to sit back and be like, oh, ooh. I got to rethink life here for a minute. Let's see. There's power in laughing about your past self. Yes, Holly, that is one of the best options that he could have gone with. Amused mastery or agree and amplify, which is probably what I would have done. If somebody brings up something bad from my past, you could eliminate it immediately. Simply agree and amplify. Oh yeah, dude, I can't believe I did that. I would do it again, but I don't have enough money or whatever. Something like that. You could capitalize his notoriety by selling. Yeah, Osis.
Hey man, the guy likes to have his prostate stimulated while some other dude rails his girlfriend. I mean, I know that's pretty popular around here. I don't partake. I never would because it's fucking disgusting. But it is what it is. I mean, that guy obviously is the most masculine guy around. While his girlfriend gets railed and he inserts things inside of himself. Super masculine, dude.
Thank you for all those details. I just appreciate that. Courtney's in the house. Hey, Courtney. Let's see what Courtney's take is on the situation.
Let's be honest. Call it a bitch move. That's not a feminine move. That's a bitch move. Sorry for the language.
Okay.
But how in the world would you dig yourself out of that one? I guess the only thing to do is kind of own up to it and be like, yeah, I did this, before. Ooh, I don't know. I don't know how recent this comes. That's what I would do. But it doesn't seem like he's going to do that. I saw, I had a notification or something pop up or whatever where Tim Pool said, I guess Jack Murphy has like a reoccurring night that he's on every week, and Tim Pool said he's not going to be on today, and I'm like, okay. I don't really watch it, but anyway, it's it's a tough one to dig yourself out of. I don't think he's going to be getting a lot of his following back.
No. Yeah, I'd agree with you on that one. Like I said, if I was part of that group, I'd have to rethink my decision-making abilities after that one. Because, like, guys, vet your gurus. That's all I'm saying. If you want to follow me, if I ever invite you to come build on my land, vet me. Try and dig up whatever you can on my past. That's also why I have no social media, anything personal. I don't even have a LinkedIn. If I had a LinkedIn, I'd probably be a millionaire by now because I'm so skilled and, but, I don't even have a LinkedIn because I don't want anything about myself out there on the internet. So another lesson in there too, but I can't help but draw the parallels here. And again, not to dig too hard on the women, but we got to recognize patterns in society here. This is very similar to the pattern of a woman who does a lot of really bad stuff in like her 20s and then tries, gets like an OnlyFans, makes some videos, some lewd videos, things like that. The internet doesn't forget. Gets into her 30s, tries to get a job, tries to get a real career. These things resurface. Oh no, that was just I did these things in the past. That's not me anymore. Doesn't really matter. Does not matter. And again, handles it like a bitch, like Courtney said. Same exact thing. This is a path that a lot of people are going to be taking where they don't realize that what you do on the internet is forever. Okay, forever. This stream, even though it's only got like 80,000 viewers, it's going to be remembered forever. Okay, yeah. Well, if you did these things recently, then yeah. I mean, I don't know. I don't. All I can say is I don't take pleasure in like destroying the guy, but the fact that he's not owning up to it, it's not masculine at all. Not masculine at all. So if he's going to continue to be resentful against people calling him out for not being masculine, well then you get what you deserve, dude. You get what you deserve. Holly says, "Thank God there's no internet during my wild days." Yep. Probably a good thing. I can't believe the fall off the cliff that dude took. There was always something weird about him to me. I could call it. I could tell it. Even though I love the idea of liminal order, I did reply to him quite a bit on Twitter. I could tell there was something off. There was something off. Something really off about him. It might be the speech impediment, kind of the like a little lispy thing he's got. Maybe it's the beard. I don't know. It's you talk too much about being masculine. You're probably not that masculine. Guys who are masculine don't have to talk about it. Same way that, you can apply that to a lot of other subjects. Guys that make a lot of money, you don't have to talk about it all the time. They just do. So it was always a little bit of a red flag to me. Facial hair don't lie, nor the fact they did it is an apartment surrounded by social media. Yeah. Well, there you guys go. That's the Jack. Yeah, no. Okay, yeah, just to give the last bit right here is this little fact of information. Regent points out that he started a, quote, war room to go after and dig up information on the people that were digging up information on him. I can't even overstate how much of a bad move that is. So wrong. So he's using his own group of paid supporters to, like, as an army to dig up dirt on other people's families. Yikes. All right, guys, that's all for today's show. I think we're going to do, let's see, New Year's. Yeah, no, we're not going to have any more shows for until between now and New Year's. Oh, Courtney's got one last comment here.
I wonder what Mike Cernovich has hidden deep in his closets.
Yeah.
Maybe we're going to have to wait a bit for that one, but that way I have a feeling that one's going to be really interesting too.
Yeah, definitely. He's one of those guys too. Again, strangely, speech impediment. Again, a lot of guys with a speech impediment. It's like physiognomy. Physiognomy does not lie. And yeah, he's definitely done a lot of weird stuff in his past. Again, oh man, I can't believe it. Dude, there's the guy that just went on a shooting spree in Colorado was like friends with Jack as well. And Mike Cernovich. This is the guy who is all about like living off grid and being artistic and all this kind of stuff, like being a manly man. Look at it. If you want to be a man, you got to get a hatchet and you got to get a dog and you got to cover yourself in tattoos. That's what being a man is. And then being a man is also going and shooting up your old coworkers at the tattoo parlors all around Colorado. That's the guy. That's Jack's friend. That's Cernovich's friend. That guy was in man or masculinity conferences. All these not all of them. 90% of those masculinity guys are all frauds. They're all losers. And But they're smart business people because they recognize that there's a need. They acknowledge, as I do and as a lot of you do, that there is a need for masculine role models in society. They've taken that up without actually earning it, and then, yeah, this is where we get. So vet your gurus. Let's work towards a more masculine society, but in a sustainable, non-rapey, non-degenerate way. How about that? Does that sound good? I think we could do that. All right, guys. That's all I got for you today. We'll see you next year. 2022 coming in hot. Yep, Wednesday the 5th. And I hope you guys have a great New Year's. Like fresh and fit. Yeah, exactly. God, I could go on about them forever. YouTube.com/weekly narrative if you want to like, subscribe, etc. I think we got some new stuff coming in for next year. I'm probably going to move more towards pre-made, higher quality videos and instead of the live streams because we need some growth. We need to grow. I need to get my own liminal order so I can have my past doxxed and then have my career destroyed. And that's it. Okay, guys. We'll see you on 2022. Big announcement. Big announcement. Oh, that's right. Yeah. So I guess the big announcement I wanted to make, it's not really that big, but the big announcement was that we're going to be moving towards pre-made videos next year. 2022 is going to be the year of high-quality, pre-made, shareable content. That's the problem with this channel is we're not growing because nothing can be shared. You can't share a 2-hour-long podcast. You share that to somebody, they're going to read this and you'll be like, what's this guy talking about? I don't even care. So we're going to be going towards more high-quality, shareable content to really start growing this channel up in 2022. Less live streams because, I mean, it's not even really sustainable, especially when news is slow like this. It's just COVID stuff. It's hard for me to find stuff that's meaningful to talk about for 2 hours straight. And I think doing 2 or 3, a couple videos a week of pre-recorded good content on a wider array of topics that are all going to bring people into the alt-centrist philosophy. That's the goal. It's really to turn it more towards alt-centrism as a philosophy and not just weekly narrative. Like, hey, what's the narrative of the week? It's more about philosophy, more about decentralization, more about actually taking action. Because 2022 might be the year I buy land. If not 2022, it's going to be 2023. So we're taking real action, real steps towards our actual philosophy, not just sitting around on YouTube talking about it. And this is a change that's going to facilitate growing the community, spreading the philosophy in a time when it's needed most. So, can't wait to travel to Jeremyville and see the studio. Yep. Hey, anytime, as soon as you can leave the confines of Canada. All right, guys, that's enough stalling. We'll see you next week.